gave us both a hug and told us she loved us and that she was going to take a shower. And I told her don't take an hour and a half because she always took really long showers. And that was the last time I saw her. My husband called 911 right now. It's not like her to worry me. That was the last thing she'd want to do.
It's the second day of testimony in the trial of Isaiah Ross. He is charged with killing 14-year-old Lyric Woods and 18-year-old Devin Clark in September 2022. The morning started on a difficult note as jurors heard from the Associate Chief Medical Examiner about the victim's injuries.
Picture this. It's early morning in a small North Carolina county. The sun hasn't risen yet. A group of guys are out riding ATVs on a back road. It's just a regular weekend thing. Nothing unusual, nothing that should have turned into a nightmare. But then they come to a stop. There, just off Buckhorn Road, hidden in the trees and the kind of place nobody was supposed to find, are two bodies. A teenage girl and a young man. Both of them shot. Both of them dead. Within hours, Orange County would learn the names. Lyric Woods, just 14 years old, and Devin Clark, 18. They were two young people who went out to have sex one September night in 2022 and simply never made it home. Police would later piece together that this wasn't a random act of violence. Someone knew exactly where they were going that night. Someone followed them or was already waiting. And when investigators started pulling on that thread, what unraveled was something far more disturbing than anyone in that quiet county ever expected. Welcome to Real True Crime 24/7. May you and your family stay safe wherever you are. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, because we bring you the parts the media never reported. Lyric Woods was 14 years old. If you looked at her social media, you'd see a kid who was bright, energetic, and full of personality. The kind of teenager who had opinions about everything, who made her friends laugh, who her mom clearly adored. Her mother, Elizabeth Canada, would later take the witness stand during the trial and describe one of the last moments she had with her daughter.
Me and my husband were sitting on the couch. She came behind us, gave us both a hug, and told us she loved us and that she was going to take a shower. And I told her don't take an hour and a half because she always took really long showers. And that was the last time I saw her.
That was the last thing her mother said to her. Nobody could have known it at the time. Devin Clark was 18, an adult by law, but still so young. Still at that stage where your whole future is sitting in front of you, wide open. His father, Dexter Clark, described him as a young man who stayed connected, someone who always picked up the phone. So when calls started going straight to voicemail that Sunday morning, that was the first sign something was wrong. Dexter eventually reported his son missing, and not long after that, he noticed something else that sent a chill through him. His 9mm handgun was missing from the house. That detail would matter enormously, very soon.
I noticed that I hadn't heard anything from him, so I called and reported him missing.
Had you tried to call him during that intervening time?
I did. I didn't want to think nothing was wrong. So I kind of just pushed it like to the side a little bit.
Was it, had Devin done this before where he'd been gone all weekend?
No, he would usually leave sometimes with his friends and come back, but you know, it wasn't nothing like out of the ordinary.
And when you tried to call him, what happened?
I didn't get no call from. I didn't get he didn't pick up. Whenever I tried to call him.
Orange County, North Carolina is the kind of place most people drive through without thinking twice. It's not a big city. It's not a famous place. It's the kind of quiet county where families know each other, where kids grow up together, and where the idea of something like this happening just doesn't feel real. Buckhorn Road cuts through a stretch of rural land, the kind of area where people go to ride ATVs, spend time outdoors, get away from everything. Remote, wooded, private. For two teenagers, it was probably just that. A place to go, a place to be. Nobody was watching. Nobody was supposed to know they were out there. But somebody did. No one in that county could have imagined what was already set in motion that Friday night, the night of September 16, 2022. Lyric and Devin had plans to meet up. That much was clear. At some point in the evening, they both ended up heading toward the same place, out on that back road, away from the neighborhoods, away from witnesses. Lyric's mother last saw her around 11 p.m. She came out, gave her hugs, said she loved them, and headed for the shower. At some point after that, Lyric left. Devin's father, Dexter, wouldn't hear from him again that night. Calls went unanswered. Texts sat unread. By Sunday morning, he knew something was off. Then ATV riders found them. The medical examiner would later reveal that both Lyric and Devin had been struck by multiple gunshots. The most severe injury on Lyric had entered her left back, a shot from behind, tearing through her lung, her aorta, and her liver. The most devastating wounds on Devin were also to the back and neck. Both shot from behind, both killed out on that isolated road, and both connected to someone investigators would begin circling almost immediately.
Anticipate that she would have at least lost consciousness within several minutes after the injuries, possibly sooner, and that she likely also would have died within several minutes.
When Orange County deputies arrived at that stretch of Buckhorn Road, the scene didn't look like an accident. It didn't look like a random act. It looked deliberate. Two young people, in a remote location, both fatally shot within what appeared to be the same event. Police quickly moved from treating this as a welfare check to treating it as a double homicide. At first, investigators had more questions than answers. Who knew these two were out here? Who had a reason? Who was the last person to see them alive? But here's the thing about this case that made it unusual from the very start. Investigators may have known the name of their suspect earlier than the public realized. The problem was, they couldn't say it out loud. Not yet, and that's because of how old he was. The investigation moved fast. Detectives started pulling together everything they could. Cell phone location data, phone records, witness interviews, and surveillance footage from any camera in the area. One piece of footage stood out. A gas station. A Petro Travel Center on Buckhorn Road, not far from where the bodies were found. Cameras there had captured something in the early morning hours following the murders. A white 2017 GMC Terrain pulled into the lot. The driver got out. A person with blonde hair. The car would later be connected directly to Isaiah Ross, a teenager from the area who had been on investigators' radar almost from the start. The footage showed this person walking briefly toward the store, then returning to the vehicle, then pumping gas, then slowly pulling out and driving away. It was the quiet, unhurried behavior of it. That's what stood out to prosecutors. Not panic, not urgency, just someone stopping to fill up a tank. Hours after two teenagers were left dead on a back road. Meanwhile, investigators were piecing together phone records and geolocation data that began painting a clearer and clearer picture, placing Ross near Buckhorn Road around the time of the murders. But there was still the question of motive. And there was still the question of how they were going to prove exactly what happened out there. Isaiah Ross was 17 years old at the time of the murders. Under North Carolina law at the time, that created a serious legal barrier. Authorities couldn't publicly name him, couldn't release his photo, couldn't alert the community to who they were looking at, even as the investigation was pointing directly at him. That legal gap became national news, and it became personal news for the families of Lyric and Devin, who were watching the process move slowly while the community had no idea who investigators suspected. There was frustration, there was grief, and there was a growing sense that the law itself had become an obstacle to justice. The case prompted North Carolina lawmakers to act. A bill was pushed through, a bill that would later be named Lyric and Devin's Law. House Bill 186 of 2023. It changed the rules so that a juvenile suspect's name, photo, and charges could be released if a judge determined they posed a danger to others. Two teenagers were dead, and it took their deaths to close a loophole that never should have existed. But while all of that was unfolding in the legislative world, investigators were working a different angle. Someone close to Ross knew something. A friend. Someone who had spoken with him in the days after the murders. And what that friend claimed to have witnessed was going to change everything. The witness's name was Christian Sykes. According to his testimony at trial, in the days after Lyric and Devin were found dead, Ross reached out to him over Snapchat. It wasn't just a message, it was a video call. And during that call, Sykes testified Ross held up a black handgun on camera. Let that sink in for a second. In the days after 2 people were shot to death, a teenager allegedly got on a Snapchat call with a friend and showed off the gun.
Well, he told me that he was going to hang out, or that he hung out with somebody, and they were going to. Do you want me to say it all? Like, okay.
It's been said before, probably.
All right. Well, he said that they were going to run a train that they went to run a train on a white girl. When they got there, they were hanging out and stuff, and somehow or another, the other boy had a gun, and he was like playing with the beam and pointing it on him, and he told him to stop, and he did it again, and he told him to stop, and he said the third time he went for the gun. They wrestled for the gun, and I don't remember exactly if he said the gun went off, but I do know he said that he shot them and dumped the bodies.
Sykes told investigators he couldn't confirm whether it was the same weapon used in the killings. But the gesture itself, the deliberate display of the firearm in the context of that moment, was what prosecutors seized on. Then there was Devin's father's gun. Dexter Clark had reported his 9mm Canik handgun missing from his home around the same time. Devin had access to the house. The working theory investigators developed was that Devin had taken the gun, possibly without his father knowing, on the night he went out. And if that gun ended up in someone else's hands by the end of that night, that told its own story. The surveillance footage, the phone data, the missing weapon, and now a witness who said he watched Ross display a gun on video. The pieces were coming together. When Isaiah Ross was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, investigators and prosecutors believed they had what they needed. But Isaiah Ross had a very different version of what happened on that road. Here is the version of events that Isaiah Ross, now 21 years old, when his trial finally began in January 2026, would ask a jury to believe. He admitted he was there that night. He admitted Devin Clark was shot and killed. But he said he didn't start it. According to Ross, the 3 of them were out on that road together. At some point, an argument broke out, and Ross's claim was that Devin Clark was the one who produced a gun, and Devin fired first. Lyric Woods, Ross said, was struck by Devin in that confrontation. And then, Ross told the court, Devin turned the weapon toward him, threatened him, told him to stay quiet about what had happened. Fearing for his own life, Ross testified that he wrestled the gun away from Devin Clark and shot him. Self-defense, his attorney argued. The problem with that story? The medical examiner's report. Lyric Woods was shot in the back. Devin Clark's most severe wounds were to his back and neck. Both of them shot from behind. If Devin was the aggressor, if he was the one pointing a weapon at Ross, why did the fatal shots land in his back? That question sat at the center of this entire trial. Isaiah Ross had been charged and processed through the juvenile to adult pipeline that North Carolina law required for serious felonies. The case moved slowly, the way murder cases do. Evidence was gathered. Motions were filed. The families waited. Before the trial began in January 2026, prosecutors offered Ross a plea deal. He turned it down. It's worth pausing on that decision. A plea deal in a double murder case almost certainly meant significantly less time behind bars than a first-degree murder conviction would carry. But Ross, or those advising him, believed that his self-defense argument was strong enough to take to a jury. So the trial began on January 14, 2026, and what unfolded over the following weeks was an emotional, intensely watched courtroom battle that the community had been waiting 3 years for. Meanwhile, outside the courtroom, something else was drawing public attention. Ross's mother had been posting on social media during the case, posts that were widely described by online observers as dismissive of the severity of the trial. Some were interpreted as mocking the proceedings. Others were seen as making light of Devin Clark's death. The posts spread quickly through local discussions and social media. The backlash was significant. For families who had already endured 3 years of grief and legal delays, watching someone connected to the defendant treat the trial as anything less than the gravest of matters was a wound on top of a wound.
I mean, damn, I said sorry to, Devin's mom and her little ugly ass ragamuffin looking ass bitches came like, ugh. But this country boy therapy, so that's what we do, country boy therapy.
The courtroom became a place where two completely different stories were told. On one side, prosecutors laid out a timeline, gas station footage showing Ross in the area in the hours after the killings, cell phone location data placing him near the scene. The testimony of Christian Sykes, who said Ross showed off a gun on a Snapchat video call in the days that followed, and then the autopsies. Both victims shot from behind. The prosecution argued that was the physical proof that this was not a confrontation, it was an attack. On the other side, defense attorney Jonathan Trapp stood before the jury and offered a different lens. He told them Ross fired only after Devin Clark had already fired, after Lyric had already been struck. He painted his client as someone who acted in a moment of panic and fear, not as a predator who came out to that road planning to kill two people. Ross himself took the stand. He looked the jury in the eye and told them what he said happened. He maintained his story. He maintained his claim of self-defense. It was a high-stakes gamble. Testifying opens a defendant up to cross-examination, and prosecutors would have pressed hard on those gunshot wounds. On the back of Lyric Woods, on the back and neck of Devin Clark. If someone is pointing a gun at you, how does shooting them result in wounds to the back? The prosecution wanted that question to be the last thing the jury thought about when they walked into deliberations. After more than a week of deliberation, the jury came back. And the verdict was not what anyone had expected. The jury found Isaiah Ross guilty of second-degree murder in the death of Devin Clark. Not first-degree, second-degree. The distinction matters. First-degree murder requires premeditation. The prosecution had to prove he planned it. The jury wasn't fully convinced of that, but they were convinced he acted with malice. They were convinced he intentionally caused Devin Clark's death. And then came the second part. On the charge related to Lyric Woods, the 14-year-old girl, the one who got her mother a hug before she left that night, the jury was deadlocked. They could not agree. The judge declared a mistrial on that count. Isaiah Ross was sentenced to a minimum of 241 months in prison, roughly 20 years, with a maximum of 300 months. For Devin Clark, for Lyric Woods, as of this video, there has been no conviction. The district attorney made clear after the verdict that the case for Lyric would not be dropped, that they intended to pursue justice for her, but a new trial date had not been set. Lyric's family left that courtroom on January 29, 2026, knowing that the person believed to have taken their daughter's life had not been held fully accountable. Devin's family watched the man convicted of killing their son receive a 20-year sentence, a number, a timeline, justice, but incomplete justice. Christian Sykes, the friend who testified against Ross, had to live with what he knew, what he saw on that Snapchat call, and the weight of whether speaking up had been enough. Ross's defense announced plans to appeal the second-degree murder conviction to the North Carolina Court of Appeals. So even that verdict was not fully settled. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, a law now carries the names Lyric and Devin, two teenagers who went out on a Friday night and never came home. Their names are now written into North Carolina legislation, a permanent reminder that the legal system had a gap, and it cost 2 young lives before anyone closed it. Lyric's mother said her last words to her were about a shower taking too long. That's what mothers say. Normal things, small things, the kind of words you say when you assume tomorrow will come. And for Lyric's family, for Devin's family, and for everyone in Orange County who watched this case unfold over 3 painful years, one question has never fully gone away. When will there be a verdict for Lyric? Until that day comes, justice in this case remains exactly half finished, and 2 families are still waiting for the rest of it. Thank you for watching Real True Crime 24/7. If you found this case interesting, Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more real true crime stories just like this. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new case. Thanks again for watching Real True Crime 24/7.